Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Personality Yoda. Today we're doing, I think, episode 6 in our series on 5 voices. And I have an amazing guest for you today, Miss Amy Hutchins, who is a nurturer guardian. And Amy was there at the very beginning of Giant, which I'll let you tell them all about later, Amy. But Amy, you're very, very welcome. Thank you for agreeing as one of my favorite personality types. As you know, I've been married to Helen for 28 years now, so poor lady. But nurturer guardians are probably right up there with the saints of the 5 voices world, in the sense that they often put up with a lot of things, but are just amazing people. So Amy, welcome to Personality Yoda. Thank you for agreeing to be my guest today.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. So Amy, tell us a little bit about you. And I know full well that as a nurturer guardian, you will underplay yourself and underplay your success. So with that in mind, tell us a bit about the journey of your own life, where you came from, things you've been up to, what it is that shaped you. Give us a little flavor for everyone who it is as our special guest today.
Sure. So we currently live in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and I was raised about 20 miles from here. And my husband, this is his hometown. So I'm just a homegrown girl. So not many people that you ask, where are you from? We're in Georgia. And we say Georgia. They're like, oh, wow, not just Georgia, but Lawrenceville, Georgia. So that gives you a sense of connection to family. We've not gone far. I'm technically an only child to Jack and Laverne Garrett, who absolutely I adore. But my aunt was raised with us. My mother's one of 12. She was 3 when their parents died. She's 10 years older than I am.
Wow.
So I call her my sister, and she calls me her niece. So I have that sister. I'm married for 31 years to Mike Hutchins, and he is the love of my life. The great thing for us about the pandemic is we have been able to be together more. And I miss him terribly when he's away from me. I was gifted to become mom and wife on the same day, mom to our beautiful daughter, Kelly. And then 5 years later, we had our son, Garrett, and Kelly and Garrett are 10 years apart. So there's a parallel between them and me and my sister.
Fantastic.
I'm grandparent to 4.
Wow.
Ranging from ages 4 to 15. So those are all Kelly's children, and Garrett and Emily are in the process of adopting. Both are married. Mike and I graduated from Georgia Tech, as did Kelly and Garrett. So we are all rambling wrecks around this house.
Okay.
And our fathers have passed away, but both moms are living. One is 93 and the other is 87. And I'm currently daughter and caregiver for the 2 of them.
Wow.
So that kind of gives you an idea of my personal life. Professionally, I worked 35 years in the corporate world. And there's a lot of nurture that goes into that story, but 35 years in the corporate world, and retired at age 57 on my 57th birthday. The same year that my father passed away and the same age that he retired. A big driver for that was reflecting on my father's life post-retirement, between retirement and death, and looking at the richness that he modeled for me and longing for that for myself. And Mike was already retired, so what a great way for us to spend our later years. So now,
what were you doing, Amy? What were you doing for your 35 years in the professional world? Give us some clues on that.
Sure. I spent some time in engineering, but most of the time was in marketing and sales. And then toward the end of my career, training and development for the marketing and sales force at Georgia Power Company, and working with education and workforce development in the state, and how we could bring our specific skill sets to the education system to better prepare students to be our workforce for the future, but also how to provide them the education they need to have a great life and earn a living wage. So
Fantastic, Amy. I think what I love about you is that you go first to the story of your people and your family, and that's so who you're wired to be. And I have to pull out of you all of your professional expertise and achievements, because actually, as a true nurturer guardian, they don't mean quite as much. I just love that. Some people, the first thing they tell you is all the things they've done, whereas your default is to tell us who you are, the people that make life meaningful, and why you love them so much. So that's always a good sign, by the way. It means that actually being authentically who you are. I'm always fascinated, by the way, Amy, when a nurturer guardian tells me they've ended up at Georgia Tech studying engineering. I wonder who it was as the authority figure that suggested to you that that might be a really life-giving career path for you.
That would be Dad, right?
There you go. There you go.
He actually grew up just very quickly in what was called the Techwood Housing Project. It was the first public housing project built in the United States of America.
Wow.
And was across the street from the campus of Georgia Tech.
Amazing.
So he knew Georgia Tech well, tried to go there on the GI Bill, but he wasn't able to do that to care for family. He went to work. He worked for AT&T Long Lines for 31 years. And as such, he was able to observe the integration of women into the workforce.
Yeah.
And as he saw that and believed that his baby girl could be and do anything she wanted to be and do anything she wanted to do, he started thinking about what would give me the greatest opportunities in life.
Wow.
And felt like engineering was a great way to go. I did have aspirations to be a pediatrician at one point in time. Yeah. So started out as a chemical engineer at Georgia Tech. And it was just too challenging for me. It was not part of, it wasn't if we looked at 70-30, it would have been way out of balance. So, Amy, I to industrial engineering, right? More people interaction. And that's where I graduated.
I think here's the thing: is the way you're wired, Amy, is whatever you think you ought to be doing, you will do incredibly well. I think it's always just a good exercise for those of us who are parents and those of us who are in positions of authority in people's lives. Sometimes actually thinking, what is the 70-30 fit for them, rather than what do I think would be a good, stable career. It is interesting, because probably if you'd give me the choice, if I'd been your careers advisor, Amy, many years ago, pediatrician or an engineer, I'd have probably said you might find that pediatrician is closer to the 70-30 principle. But the amazing thing is you found a way, didn't you, listening to the story, to find your way gradually back towards people, back towards making a difference for causes you believed in. And ultimately, I guess that discipline structure of work is so valuable. And I know I've experienced. Tell us, Amy, let's move on to another question. So how did the nurturer guardian find a giant? And tell us a little bit about how the kind of 5 voices and the giant experience actually was liberating for you. People are always interested to know, how on earth did you come across giant in those days?
Great, thanks for asking. So first of all, how did I find giant? I was the training and development manager for marketing and sales in a corporation, and the team, I'd never done that before. We had a talented team, and they helped define the skill sets that our marketing and sales force needed: technical, business, and relational. Well, I mean, look at the core tool. Where do you think we had the greatest deficit? In relational skill sets and in leadership. Mm-hmm. And so we had leadership available to a total of 20 high potential individuals in our entire company a year. So that wasn't going to get us where we needed to be. And a friend through Leadership Gwinnett introduced me to Giant. At his home, Jeremy came to speak, and I have described it as the heavens opening and the light shining down. I was like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what we need, right? So I signed myself and another leader up for X-Corp.
I remember.
And then following your direction, spent the first 3 months of that focused on self. And I would describe that process, Steve. I tell people I felt like I slit myself open from the top of my forehead to the bottom of my toes, took everything out, looked at it, and I only put the best of me back inside.
Wow.
And that's really the way I feel about Giant. And I cannot tell you how it has transformed me as an individual.
Wow.
So I'll come back to that, but let me tell you the business journey first.
Yeah.
So came back and implemented that with my team. Now this was 6 years ago, so it was quite clunky at the time. We had no online platform. There was no such thing as SAS.
No.
So I was going back and creating my own presentations and learning through failure often. So I just want everybody who's part of Giant now to just, thank you for the tools and the resources that we have. So, we need to model ourselves after the example of growth and meeting our customers' needs. When I retired, it had taken hold modestly. But since retirement, it has really kind of taken off within the corporation, and it has just been a delight to see the transformation that's taking place in what I call, not to your surprise, my work family.
Yeah.
Hired 3 years, I still love them, and I still would fight for the highest possible good in every one of them every day.
Oh.
Now, personally, Steve, oh, I'm sorry.
No, please, Amy, carry on.
Personally, you guys are the first ones who ever told me that it was okay to be me and not be an actor in my life. And that goes back to a lot of the oughts and shoulds of a woman. So I'll be 60 this year. So if you think about growing up, even in high school, with a bent towards science and math, didn't exactly make me the most popular girl on the block. Going to Georgia Tech, where the ratio was 7 men to every woman overall, but even more dramatic than that in the College of Engineering. Having professors stand in front of the classroom and tell you that you have absolutely no business being there, and regardless of your academic performance, the highest grade you'll receive in their class is a C. Going into a corporate world, and women telling you need to speak boldly, and when you do, men telling you that you weren't bold, you were another word that starts with a B. And, being sexually harassed and told that you absolutely cannot file a complaint because no man will ever hire you to come to work for them again. So all of these things where you try to be you, but the all shoulds for a woman coming up in that time were not only different, but they were in conflict with one another. Don't ask with a please, just ask for what you want. Well, that was too forceful. You need to be more gentle about what you ask for. I had a man walk around the table after I'd made a presentation one time, pat me on the head and say, I need to get me one of these. So,
Wow.
I think what we need to remember is that when we talk about personality, that I'm a nurturer, connector, and you know that well, I don't want us to ever abandon thinking about the generational alts and shoulds, because no matter how hard we try, those stories still come up in my head when I end up in a situation that's uncomfortable or that I have met unanticipated resistance or conflict. Those things still pop forward for me as a boomer female in an engineering world.
Wow. So Amy, whether you liked it or not, you were actually pretty pioneering in the sense of what you went through and what you championed and stayed in. I mean, gosh, I guess I hope it's a sign of the progress that hopefully your contemporaries going in now don't have to deal with those things. But I think the reason why many of them and many of the people listening today will be grateful because people like you actually went first and actually began to change the culture from the inside. So it's interesting how most nurturer guardians, Amy, will never, ever stick up for themselves. but they will always stick up for values and principles they believe in, and particularly the people who they feel responsible for. So it's amazing how what I call the mother bear will often come out when actually something that is wrong, it's never if it's about something, you'll just keep taking it. But if it's somebody who you feel responsible for or values that you believe in, there is a very, very strong gift and a passion in our nurturer guardians, which it's really quite moving to hear. So, you know, I remember you coming to that first exec core, I think we called it at the time, and just being so grateful, because if you think of, you know, the early adopters, the people who come to something which is a bit like fresh air, are almost all future orientated voices. So to actually have some people like you that were so grounded and so sort of, I remember having lunches and dinners with you and just being actually incredibly grateful, because you've heard me many times, I suspect, say that actually for me, Giant is the 82%, particularly the 43% who represent the nurturer first voice, who are the most undervalued and the most underutilized, and the ones which are often not heard, but probably for me are the ones that cause the greatest transformational change in any family, team, or organization, if actually they are celebrated, sponsored, championed, and given a voice. So it's always personally moving to me, Amy, to believe that some of the things that Jeremy and I created actually became agents of liberation for people like you. And what you're doing now, we're a small part of almost freeing you to be who you were made to be. And part of me wishes we could have done that for you when you were a lot younger, but at least we're where we are now. I mean, you've got many, many more years left. So thank you for sharing that. That means a great deal. I always ask, and maybe Tracy will share, is one of the tools that is absolutely foundational to Giant is the concept of how do we create liberating leadership? How do we create environments with those we lead, whether that's in the home, whether that's in a small team, whether that's in a big organization? How can we be leaders that people want to follow, not have to follow? And we always talk about this ability to calibrate high support and high challenge. But I always say to people, if you just do for others what you would want done for you, you'll get it wrong about 90% of the time. So whenever we have a special guest on, Amy, I always ask them to go, give us some clues, because you represent, as a nurturer guardian, by the way, 12.8% of the population. So you are actually the most represented. I've often said that, you know, when God made your type, he loved it so much that he decided to make a lot more. When he made mine, he decided probably it was best to limit the manufacturing batch because it would be needed. So help us understand, Amy, if I was going to be a really good boss to you, if I was going to be the person who really created an environment of empowerment opportunity for you, give us some clues. What would high support and high challenge look like and feel like for you as a nurturer guardian?
Thanks for asking. High support would look like you valuing me. And you valuing relationships. So if we have entered into a trusting relationship with one another, then I'm going to welcome your challenge. Remember that I will work harder to help you win than to help me win, right?
That's why I love you so much, Amy. That's such a wonderful thing.
But it's going to be really important for you to challenge me to use and this is a great tool from Giant, the provisional plan and promise language with me, because if you articulate something and I think it's something you want, I'm being a off the scale judger, right? I'm going to walk out of that office and start planning to get it done today. And my perfectionism, right? I'm going to start working really hard at it, and if we come back and it's not what you wanted, I'm going to feel both like a failure and a little bit resentful that, you know, you told me to go off and do that, right? Because there was a miscommunication, which falls equally on me and on you. So I think
so good, Amy. Let's just stop there a second, because what we put up is the provisional plan promise tool that you alluded to. So what Amy's saying there, as I heard, is to go, every nurturer guardian has perfectionist tendencies. and their desire to do the right thing for a boss is very, very high. But some bosses, I probably will have been this person, Amy, so forgive me, will often throw out ideas as if they're actually what they want to happen. And you're so wired as a nurturer guardian to try and go, well, if that's what Steve wants, that's what I'm going to deliver. But then to find what you thought was a plan, i.e. we're really going to do this, only to find later that all that work you did, I come back and go, well, why are you doing that, Amy? And you go, because you said that's what we're going to do. And I go, no, I was just brainstorming. That's provisional. So the reason why we created this tool, Jeremy and I, is because both Jeremy and I are very, very good at sounding like we're making plans when actually we're being provisional. So whenever you're dealing with nurturer guardians, one of the most loving things you can do for them, and the reason why, Amy, I always give people permission, is to say, hey, before you launch into work, you can ask me, Steve, is this provisional, plan, or a promise? So there's a great use for the tool, Amy. So thanks for sharing that. Any of you, if you're going to really liberate and really empower your nurturer guardians, this is a tool that you need to use yourself, but you also need to give them permission to use with you. So forgive me, Amy, I just thought what a great teaching moment that you gave us. So for my species as pioneer connectors, this is probably one of those tools that is incredibly valuable if I'm going to keep influence with you. So give us a few more things. What else can we be doing for you in terms of helping really create the right environment for you to be at your best?
Well, so in terms of challenge, I think bringing challenge around perfectionism is really important for me. You know, that has to do with everything in life. The other challenge for me is to make everything a fourth or fifth gear activity. As far as gears, which is the time where it becomes really intentional work. So, you know, identifying a need of a family member, and rather than addressing it as a daughter or a mother or a wife, getting so intentional about it, it almost looks like it's a project plan, right? So I think me personally, I need challenge around that, not to transform everything in life into fourth or fifth gear. The other thing I would say is change is hard for me.
Yeah.
And it's even harder when the pace of change becomes rapid.
Yeah.
And so challenging me and helping me deal with not just change, but in today's environment, the 21st century, the pace of change. Yeah. So you pick. I have plenty more you could help me work on. You pick the one you think is most valuable.
I think the levels of self-awareness, what I know is with you, Amy, as a nurturer guardians, is the moment you see an opportunity for learning, you will absolutely dive into it. So I love the way you use all giant vocabulary as if it's just perfectly natural to everyone there. But the thing I want to real go at you there is to go, the perfectionist piece is hard for people to really understand how much self-accusation you will do inside your head. So whenever you've got a nurturer guardian, you very rarely have to bring any challenge. The reason being is they are probably one of the most guilty of challenging themselves inside with their own voice of accusation of any of the voice orders. So in the end, everyone else sees the consummate professional, the team player, the most incredibly loyal, disciplined, you know, everyone loves nurturer guardians, apart from the nurturer guardian when they look in the mirror. Because they all have that somehow imposter syndrome. And I still remember, Amy, now talking to you, going, it's so wonderful to find a nurturer guardian who's functioning at the highest levels of leadership, because I don't meet enough of them. So what was it that allowed you effectively to keep being promoted? The assumption was probably somewhere there were people who sponsored you, who championed you, who almost took responsibility for your career development because you deserved it, but probably you would never have put yourself forward each time in a competitive context. And I find that again and again with nurturers, and particularly nurturer guardians, because of that internal perfectionism, they almost always seem to end up staying at a level where they limit themselves, and they almost need somebody else externally to almost sponsor them and champion them and tell them almost they can do it. So I'd be interested to know whether you had people who did that for you in your career.
I absolutely did. And wonderful, wonderful leaders. By the way, all the three that were most influential, all men. So I don't want to ever give the impression that, no. So, but that really recognized, not just my head, but my heart about business. And knew, I think for them, the great thing was they knew they could count on me to give everything I had to what it was that they wanted to do. And the last position I had was given to me to carry out kind of a legacy project for an executive in the company. And it was the best experience of my entire career. So you're right. That's exactly how it happened.
And so therefore, again, the learning is always with our guests. They help provoke. So you will know nurturer guardians. You will probably know more than you realize, and you'll love them all. But here's the thing. If you are going to help them fulfill their potential, you will actually sometimes have to stop them sabotaging their own leadership by actually not wanting to go further because they fear letting people down. It's never about them. It's always the fear of getting, the Peter Principle, you get promoted to your level of incompetence, which for people like me is like, well, of course. But for a nurture guardian, the fear of being promoted to your level of incompetence, where you let others down around you, usually is enough to stop them even applying. And that's why they need help, sponsorship. And the other thing I say, Amy, which I'd be interested to know if you resonate with, is I call it, if you're not careful, nurture guardians have a propensity over time to their box shrinks. And their box is the world in which they believe they are highly competent, highly skilled, where they know they're not going to let anyone down. And what they do is, if they're not careful, they go, I never want to go outside this box, because if I go out, I could let anyone down. And at the moment, everyone really likes me. Everyone appreciates what I do. And I feel confident I can deliver what's in my box. But over time, if you're not careful, the box starts to shrink for some reason. And what I'm saying, for me, when I'm challenging and trying to liberate nurture guardians, I'm always saying, help me to help you enlarge your box, because I want you to believe you can do a lot more than what it is you're currently doing. And in the end, a lot of people put nurture guardians in the box and say, you're going to do the administration for me because you're brilliant at it and you make me look wonderful. But what I'm doing is I'm actually being cruel, because I'm limiting your growth, because it makes such a difference for me having you. So the law of the box, as I call it for nurture guardians, how big's the box, which way is it going, and how do I not smash the box, because that would feel unsafe, but how do I help keep expanding the box so you feel comfortable, safe, secure inside it, rather than just removing all the boundaries and you going, oh my goodness, I'm going to sink in this massive world. Any of that resonate, Amy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's brilliant. Thank you for giving me a context to think of that in as I challenge myself too. That's great.
So there you go, nurture guardians, the loves of my life, and you can encourage them every single day about why you love them and what you value most, and they will never ever get arrogant, and they will never get prideful, and they will always keep on giving to other people. The other thing I say, Amy, is in terms of, if I'm your boss, I will insist you do self-care. I will tell you, if you keep caring for everybody in a perfectionist tendency, you will eventually burn yourself out and be useless to everyone. So how do you do rest well? How do you look after yourself well? How do you take the time to enjoy things just for you, rather than always feeling that somebody more deserving of it is there? So that would be, you can imagine, I would be probably, hopefully, a good boss for you, Amy, because in the end, it's knowing the people that you're responsible for. Some of you will have children who are nurture guardians. All of this is valuable wisdom that you can use, and hopefully is liberating to those on the other end of your leadership. So Amy, thank you for allowing us to mind that one. So here's my next question for you, which I know at times for nurture guardians is like, okay, slightly more difficult, but I want to say to people is go, let's say you've got, I don't know, at least 30 years left, Amy, okay? And because you look after yourself, as all ISFJs will, nurture guardians will, it's highly likely. And I said to you, okay, now you've done all your corporate work. Now you have a chance just to go, what would I love to do just because I would love to do it? And what I'm saying is we're going to remove all of the inhibitions. So all the things like, oh, I couldn't do that, couldn't do this, couldn't afford it. And I'll say, I will provide whatever capital is needed, and every relationship in the global network of Giant is going to be available to help you, help us do something together that you would go, do you know, Steve, if you'd help me with that, and I'm honest about it, this is what I would absolutely love to do that fits me, it fits my 70-30. So my question is, what would we be doing together, Amy? What would it look like? Is it a non-profit? Is it a business? There's no limit on scope and scale and size, and there's no limit on resources or opportunities. What in you is, I guess, the dream that you'd most love to do with the next 20, 30 years of your life?
The dream would be to find a way to pour into young people of high school age to help them make good choices for their future. And good's a judgmental word, but if y'all will just give me some grace with that as I try to articulate this.
Yes.
And so the blessing of some of my corporate experience working with public education is seeing that there are students throughout our state that don't have the resources to be able to look at their skills and abilities and their personality. If we go back to 70-30 and Peace Index, right? Those are two gauges that we use in Giant to say, am I operating out of my strengths the majority of the time? And is the work that I'm doing bringing peace to my life? And so being able to help young people make choices around skills and personality and issues and what they're naturally good at and understanding that, rather than what is attracting them or what they think may be fun, so that they can earn a living wage in a way that brings them peace and contentment. And really, it's the group of young people who don't have access. There's a group that has access to all of those resources, and they're already making good choices. But there's another group of students around the state that don't have access, and I want to bring that access to them.
Well, I love Amy, and this is the reason why I always want to know what people's wiring is when I hear the dream, I always want to make sure it aligns with allowing them to be at least 70-30. And when I listen to you describe what you're doing, what you'd love to do, it moves my heart, because I go, that's what you were made for. What you've just described there is, if you think about it, is saying, who are those who are not necessarily already privileged, who have access to everything already? Who are those that kind of society tends to not see? Who are the ones that often get missed, who have real skills that you believe in, who have real ability, but actually they don't necessarily have the champions, they don't have the system which is cheering for them? And how do we help them actually understand, know themselves a little bit about their personality, understand what they were made for? So the 70-30 tool, what is it they're going to find life in doing? And how do we equip them to be able to make good choices so that actually they can go on and play their part inside society, that actually they can build healthy families, that they can have work that is productive and meaningful, so they can provide for their families as well. So if you think of everything that you are made for, this ability to challenge injustice, to champion those that often society miss, to bring, as it were, your organizational passions and disciplines, and ultimately as well, Amy, leverage everything that you've already been given in terms of the experience of your life. So most nurturing guardians, when I ask them the question, it's relatively easy to see that what they're visioning for their future really does connect and build with what they've already feel confident in their experience of doing. So come back to me. Does that all make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what would it take for that to happen? Because I'm looking at it going, I love it. The world needs it. And if ever there was somebody who has the capacity to be the advocate face with the connections and with the skills and with the winsomeness to do that, what would it take to actually make that happen? And have you made any progress, I guess, yet? Or what help do we need from the giant family to cheer and to do whatever we can? Because it's interesting how many people, even another nurturer last week with Chandra, she was saying that basically she wanted to transform education. It's always interesting how the nurturers almost always want to care for others, but hers was very much in the incarnational piece of the one or the two who were actually needed the help that she didn't or she was given. Whereas with you, it's kind of it's actually interesting. It's a bit more systemic, isn't it, in the way that how do we change a system so that actually more children have access to what it is they need? What progress are we making, Amy?
That was spot on about changing the system. And so one of the things I want to make sure, because I have to, is that the current public education system, I'm a strong supporter of. And the work that I'm describing typically falls within a counselor's role. And a counselor, one of the counselor's greatest desires would be able to do this for every student that they have. But demands on those individuals don't always allow it. And so it's really about working within the existing system to provide the resources so that the people who are trained to do this are able to do it, right? And so I'm working with some of the folks at the state level that includes counseling to think through that. Our daughter is a teacher of at Tequila High School, and I have asked if I can work with her student council team around leadership to see how that might interact. We already have a phenomenal tool for skills assessment students. And so what I'm really doing is, and now, again, the tool's there. It doesn't mean it always gets used. So I would be bringing that tool along with us. So it's really about how do we take what's already existing that is good and grow it and make it better. And so there's tremendous foundation, but, funding is going to be a big issue. So do we need to start a nonprofit to fund some of this? Maybe. I would really rather it be funded through normal sources because then it can't go away. There's so many. If you want to know what that looks like in my head, it looks like this right now. But I know what the baby steps are to start to make progress to get there, which is talking to the people at the highest levels, marrying Giant with the systems that already exist, educating myself, test driving it with students. Those are my first steps.
And that's so good. I think the thing is, Amy, is to go, what you bring, the thing I would be looking for, praying for if I were you, is I would be looking for somebody who is perhaps a more entrepreneurial character in the political system of the state, who actually believes in what it is that you are trying to do and actually sees in you somebody who can actually deliver on what their manifesto or election promise might be. So if you think what you said to me was the thing you love most about your last job you did was when an executive person gave you a legacy project, because you are the ultimate completer finisher of actually turning vision into reality. But you usually need someone who will deal with the air traffic control of all the big egos, who actually then will wrestle control politically and economically so you don't have to do that. So in the sense, everything you're doing is perfect because you're actually doing your pilots and your prototypes to actually test the model. So everything with you wants to run pilots anyway. Big, hairy entrepreneurs like me want to go, let's just make it happen. So the fact that potentially there might be a moment in time when you have built a scalable system where you've actually said, look, this works. I've made it work in one school with one group of people. Here's the pilot. Here's what it costs. Here's what it takes. What we need now is to scale it the word scale is deeply attractive to pioneers. And you'll find a lot of pioneers in the political world because they like usually being the center of attention, and they like the fact they can make things happen. And I have a sneaking suspicion, Amy, if you are faithful with the little that you have right now, and that actually you build the prototype, I don't have, if I were you, I think I would want to echo an agreement with your wisdom. I wouldn't make it a non-profit unless you have to, because I think it's much better if it's a project that can be owned and championed by someone who wants to be the mayor of the city, or somebody who is the governor, or whatever it might be, who actually is able to say, okay, I want to do this. And somebody says, if we're going to do this, sir or ma'am, you need Amy Hutchins to help you because she's already doing this. And here's the genius of your personality, Amy, is everyone knows it's not about you. Everyone knows there isn't a politically ambitious, economically ambitious bone in your body, which means actually at the state level, internally in the systems, you actually know how to build relational collaboration and influence because you're not political in the way you function. So actually there will be an advantage in being who you are and the story that you have. So I have a sneaking suspicion, Amy, that we're going to end up with one of those Esther moments where, for such a time as this, where you prepared for this role, and actually the discipline of being faithful, it might be 2 years from now, it might be 5 years from now, but I have a sneaking suspicion as you are faithful with the prototype and the pilot, there will come a moment when somebody actually wants to then scale and magnify and make it part of their campaign in your state. So I hope that's a prophetic utterance over your life, Amy, but I'd love to know how it resonates and feels even as I share it, because obviously nobody ever shares this stuff with me in advance, so that I actually get to be just truly me live, and you don't worry about the 3.5 million people who are listening.
Yeah. Actually, that was very liberating, because you just helped me reset expectations from saving every student in the state of Georgia to creating a prototype that I could gift to a partner that could scale. And that makes so much more sense for me, and gives me so much more peace and direction and energy to put toward what I'm good at. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much for that gift.
Oh, Amy. See, the thing is, I would work with you always. So in some sense, because I'm opposite to you, I look at it and go like, wow, it's that whole thing that team is so much more powerful than individual. But knowing the superpower that you bring and owning that and not trying to compete with everyone else's superpower means that what's possible is something far greater than any individual could ever do. Because there will also be people who are the more like me, the kind of, shall we say, the more politically entrepreneurial. But the reality is they don't have the ability to do what you will have already done. And it's the marrying of those. And here's the thing. You said something at the very beginning. You're one of the few people that go, if I treat you well and honor you as a leader, you actually take more joy in helping me win than helping you win, which for characters like certain characters like mine is like, really? Is there anyone who's really that good? I know people say it, but in your case, it's actually true. And that's what I think is the superpower synergy, which in many ways allows things to happen that would never happen if individuals have to, as it were, have everything about them involved in it. And I hope that's, I look forward to following the story, Amy, but if anyone is doing something that is they were made for, that you will have a life capacity and passion to do, and is in the right place at the right time to do it, Amy, it's you. So bless you. I look at the time and go, we've gone way over, mainly because I just love talking to you and hearing what you're doing, and just want to celebrate a truly liberated nurturer guardian who has been such an encouragement to me and such a joy to our giant extended family. So Amy, you can have the final word, which will be a surprise to most nurturer guardians around me. But if there's anything you'd like to say to your fellow nurturer guardians out there, then please have the last word.
Well, thank you to Steve. And I want to give you each permission to be who you are and bring your best. It's not only okay, but it's necessary. So be you. Do not be an actor in your own life.
I love it. That'll tweet Amy, that one will. So Amy, thank you for being a special guest today on Personality Yoda. Do you know, we've actually got some time off for Easter. So the next in the series, I have the amazing Lucio Berriman on April the 23rd. So watch this space. You will see, no doubt, warnings of what's coming. But after Amy, it was almost cruel to let anyone go next week because they would pale by comparison. So there we go. We're having a break for Easter, but join us next time on Personality Yoda, where we're going to be looking at the nurturer creative connector, probably a nurturer connector creative. We'll find out when we get there. Okay.